know. So that's how that was my progression, my growth into the industry, and then of course it just kind of blossomed from there.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a similar story for a lot of people, right? Where they're a little bit late to the game. It takes their
Yeah,
grandma asking about what Bitcoin is before they kind of take that dive, and then that's when they start kind of maybe they trade on a Dex for a little bit, or you open a Coinbase account, and then they learn about Bored Ape, and then that gets them interested in NFTs, and then they start exploring that kind of, as you mentioned, the human side of crypto. So I'm curious to know, what was your first NFT project once you were in Web3?
sure. So a little shout out to Vincent. He does Cryptolution. He runs a cool show on YouTube. Um, I was because at that point I was still looking at it purely as an investment. I was like, okay, what's hot? What's going on? What's the next Board Ape? Right? That's what everybody wants to know. So I was following this guy, and his first advice was an ETH project. I don't know if you're. I'm sure most people are familiar with Neo Tokyo, Alex Becker. So that was my first dive in, and actually, it's funny because I was just like, I had, I'm not going to brag. I had some bags, right? I was okay. I was doing all right, but even still, I think at the time, I can't remember what I think it was like point 0.7 ETH. So it was, I think like $1,200 or something to get in. And I was like, I'm insane. I'm I'm buying a JPEG. What the hell am I doing? But just to hear about how, because it was like a season two, it wasn't season one, of course. I was late on that. We're all early, right? But I'm still late. Um, yeah, so that was my first one, and I at the time, I mean, I think there is a lot of power in community. Of course, I mentioned that, but like, I think I wasn't getting it yet at that point, and so I never really got involved in the community there. And then I quickly found Solana after that, but I really got into the market at an interesting time, I think, because not the most interesting, of course, financially, but interesting nonetheless because I had no idea that there was like this tribalism, between the blockchains. Of course, I understood they were different blockchains, but I didn't know that like Solana was looked down upon at times by some people, and maybe even still now. Um, so I just kind of was like, oh, there's another project. Oh, I've got to buy Sol to get in this right. Okay, got it. Let me get a Sol wallet. It just was like not even more than a thought of execution. I had no idea there was like a cultural element to it either. Uh, but it's funny because I mean, the moment I got into uh, Soul, I think my first one. I don't know. I think I bought a couple that I can't even remember the names of. They're gone now. But I think the first one I really remember was getting into Trip and Ape Tribe, and I've got I'm just diamond handing a couple of those. Um, but yeah, that was my first project, and I guess my second memorable one anyway, and how I got into both blockchains.
Yeah, it's interesting. You started with ETH, right? You've kind of you discovered your first NFT collection with Neo Tokyo, which if you aren't familiar or some of the audience isn't familiar, it's a collection on ETH by a really popular crypto kind of DeFi trader named Alex Becker, and that was moderately successful on ETH. But it's interesting that you started on ETH and then you kind of slowly discovered these new blockchains or these new frontiers of NFTs and crypto and so on and so forth, and in particular the Solana NFT ecosystem. And then that's when you started to really discover communities, right? And being involved in communities and what that means and what that entails. And I think one thing we all experience as we kind of get used to Web3 is how different Web3 communities are, and how it kind of fits into each of our own lives. So, a question I have for you is, what was the best Web 2 community you have ever been a part of, and how does that compare to your Web 3 communities?
Huh. Honestly, I don't think I've ever had like a real Web 2 community experience. As much as I was in technology, I never really got into connecting with people on the internet. I think, because I don't think I've ever revealed this to you, but we've spoken before. But I'm in my 40s. I'm an old guy in this industry. And so, like, for me, I grew up in a time where, like, cell phones were just kind of becoming ubiquitous, and like by the time, you know, what was it? And again, I already told you my age, but I'm dating myself severely because by the time, MySpace came out, or and AIM was really popular, shit, like LiveJournal, like all those things were just kind of, I didn't find them, and maybe that's why I didn't understand how important community was when I first got into NFTs, because I really didn't understand it. It was really like a light bulb moment, kind of even late in the game for now, for as early as we all are. So I don't have a really smart answer for that, but it's still, I guess, revealing anyway, right?
Yeah, no worries at all, right? And I think what's interesting is, as and first of all, you're not the oldest person I've interviewed, and you're definitely not like the oldest person in this space. I've got one of my really big holders for my project. His name is Hang Jack, and he's an older guy too, but he offers such a unique perspective to everything in this space, and he definitely keeps us, me and my co-founders, really rooted in fundamentals and understanding like what it means to run a business and so on and so forth. So I think it's super valuable to have different perspectives like that in the space, right? Like I'm super young and you're not old, but relatively old, maybe compared to the average age of the
Right.
average NFT investor. But I think that's kind of what's unique, right? It provides you a different experience, or sorry, perspective to some of these other traders or some of these other community members across Web3. But um, so it's interesting, right? You've kind of taken this journey into NFTs, and you've never really had or really experienced that um, kind of internet culture of being in a community, right? And it's interesting that this is your more or less first experience or first endeavor into that. So, as you've
Mhm.
had this experience in Web3, um, I'm curious, what was the kindest thing someone has done for you in Web3? And then if you don't have an answer for that, what is the kindest thing someone has done for you in Web2?
Sure. Well, I think that okay, so there's just sort of a bevy of things I could say about that in the Web3 space, because although, yeah, I'm sure we'll get to this, but there are, some nefarious folks out there. There are people who are not so cool. Um, so many people have reached out their hand, reached back to me, and really offered their help, their support. Um, I think, okay, but if I had to pick one, I would say, I don't know if you're familiar, because shortly after I got into PFP NFTs. I think that's how most of us get into it. Um, I discovered the one of one artists, and people like John Lay, Ben Baoshao. Um, gosh, I'm spacing right now, but so many folks. Anyway, I love one of one art. I've always appreciated art, beautiful things. My favorite place in the world to go is the Metropolitan Museum of Art in NYC. But anyway, to answer your question, the kindest thing I think was I got to speak with Laura L. I don't know if you're familiar, but I am Laura L. is her handle on Twitter, and um, she's super popular. And I was taking a huge swing by reaching out to her and just saying, hey, I've got this project I'm starting, and I'd really love it if you would, you know, um, work with me, and maybe we can do a collab, blah blah blah. Just a super shot in the dark. And I was like, yeah, she's super busy. She's like one of the most influential one of one artists on, at least in the Solana space, and actually she's on ETH as well with Super Rare. But I was like, there's absolutely zero chance she's going to reach out to me, answer me, whatever. I had no hopes at all. And sure enough, it was like maybe a week or two later, because she is super busy. She answers me, and it was the warmest, kindest, most heartfelt response I've ever gotten, maybe in my entire career. From when you're pitching to a stranger, right? And she just said, "Oh my gosh, I really wish I could help you out, but and this was right around the holidays, and she was like, I'm traveling for the holidays, so and I'm super busy with all these other projects. But hey, you know what? I'd love to help you out in any way that I can. Please let me know, since I can't do the collab, what I can do." She had mentioned she's traveling for the holidays. I think I said that, And it was just so sweet and so kind. And we just continued to chat. I said, "Hey, you know what? I totally get it. Thank you so much for your consideration, your kind response, blah blah blah." And then I said, "Well, hey, you know what? If you don't mind, I'd like to, I have a couple of your pieces, your additions. I'd like to give one away." And she was like, "Oh, absolutely. I'd be happy to support you. I'll shout it out. I'll help you out in any way that I can." And then she even went as far as to actually donate a piece so that I didn't have to give one of my own away. That's still yet to come. We're coordinating and planning on how to do that the best way to do that. But I mean, I've never had anyone be, even though she couldn't help me in the way that I was requesting, which is totally understandable, she was still willing to be kind, be supportive, and help me along on my journey. And I was like, wow, how much more can someone give in this space to a total stranger? Like, I just couldn't, I was moved beyond words. So I'd say that's the kindest thing anyone's done for me so far.
Yeah, and I think experiences like that are really telling of the community in Web3, right? Of course, there are like a lot of bad actors, that'll try to scam you or manipulate you or so on and so forth. But there's also a lot of people who are actually like genuinely contributing to the ecosystem, and trying to improve what we have going on here and are nice and are kind and are willing to help people not only with their own endeavors but also just help educate them or help them grow or give them opportunities they otherwise wouldn't have had, right? For me, um, my one of the kindest things that ever happened to me was this guy who's extremely influential now, but uh, he took several hours out of his day across multiple weeks to just advise me and my co-founder for like no reason at all. Just the kindness of his heart. He was super. He shot down ideas. He gave us recommendations. Like it was just an awesome experience. And if it weren't for a random DM I sent one day, it never would have happened. So, and that's one thing I always like tell people in this space is just always just send the DM. You never know what can happen, what doors could open for you. And in your case, you sent a DM, then you were afforded this really neat opportunity for basically like not a lot of effort. You just kind of sent it out one day and then kind of saw what happened from that. So it's been interesting learning about your experience kind of coming into Web3. But I'm interested in knowing now what made you want to launch a project on Web3.
That's a good question. So, as I mentioned, I've been around the block a few times. I'm in my 40s. I've worn a lot of hats in the pre Web3, and I couldn't even I've been in the financial services. I've been in software as a service. I've been in a lot of different things, mostly around the business development and sales aspects. That's kind of I not every position I've ever held, but that's sort of the overall the theme, right? So in that realm, there isn't a lot of uh, I should say there's like a certain type people associate with that role, a certain type of personality, and really, it's not mine. I'm not the typical sales person, business development person. So I've always been kind of a dreamer. I've always had just ideas rattling around in my head, um, and I guess that makes me a creative person. I don't know, but even when I was in school, because as a kid, I loved comic books. I loved to read stories and watch cartoons, and I just loved the creative arts in any capacity, whether it be art, animation, movies, books, comic books, whatever. So as I developed into the professional world, because I started my family pretty young. I had my first child when I was, or my wife had her first child when we were in our 20s, and so I didn't really have a lot of time to experiment and try out new things. So I always had to have like a real job with benefits, and that creative side just never really went away, and I never really had an outlet for it. So I still have these like yellow legal pads from way back in the day where I was just scribbling ideas that I still develop now, and it's like I kind of come back to them and I kick them around, and I say put them into a Word doc. And now it's in the cloud somewhere, you know. So it's like that side of me never really went away, even though I never had an outlet for it. I never really had a way to get it out there or a reason to be doing it. I was just doing it for fun, you know, because I never dreamed I would. You know, well, I should say I did kind of dream. You know, like you hear about. You know, this is going back a long way, but like Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, like you know, they were nobodies in the industry, but they wrote the screenplay that won an Oscar. You know, so you kind of, I had like sort of like moonshot dreams, but never ever thought that I would actually go to figure that out because I always had responsibilities, you know, and that's fine. I love being a dad. It's totally cool. Um, so then Web3 comes around, and you know, I already told you how I got into it, and then I just started like, and actually, you know, there are people. I mean, basically every founder that's you can think of their name is fits this bill, but I pretty quickly, once I got into the Solana sphere of things, you know, I came into became acquainted with the D Gods and Frank, and of course, everyone knows who Frank is, and everyone listens to him speak. And I can't speak for everyone, but for me, listening to that guy speak was so inspiring, you know. And even before he was doxxed, like, you know, he was very open about his age. And I'm like, wow, you know what? I have a daughter about his age, but holy shit, is he inspiring, you know? And it was just sort of like, and also I was going through some like personal journeys with like therapy and hypnosis and just trying to like really deal with some stuff from my past. And part of that process was really I got in touch with this amazing hypnotherapist who not only helps you just kind of like declutter your psyche, but also really envision what you want for your future in your life. And part of that process is like he mentions that like essentially when you define what you want, it's sort of like kismet. Like the universe will just kind of start not just serving it up, but like you'll start to recognize connections. You'll start to have ideas, and things will just start kind of fitting into place. Not because it's magic and it just happens that way, but because your mind will now be open to these opportunities, and you'll have this motivation to go for it and seize the moment. And so when all that was happening internally, plus all of these passions and these ideas and these stories that I've been writing slowly for years and years, just kind of meets up with this ultimate opportunity, which is Web3. You know, it's, if nothing else, it is, well, I should say, it is a lot of things, but it is very much a way for you to find your people and find and really build, you know, I don't want to say an audience because that feels so like cliche, but just find that group of people that's going to give a shit about what you're doing, and they'll be your cohorts, so to speak, and join that journey with you, you know. And that's really what I'm trying to do, and that's what motivates me, and that's why yeah, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And one thing you mentioned that I think is relative, like, is awesome is Web3 is always just an opportunity to find people that are like minded, you know, who click with your creative style or enjoy your vision and want to partake in that and realize that, you know. And you have this really interesting story where you had to mature very quickly. You know, you started your family earlier than most, right? You said in your 20s you had your first child, and then that caused you to kind of sideline your more creative passions and in pursuit of responsibilities. You know, you have to put food on the table, you have to put a roof over your head, and that's oftentimes a hard thing to do, right? To give up that kind of dream to pursue stability, because at that point it's more about your family and ensuring that you can do well for yourself. So as you've been navigating these processes and as you've kind of taken your journey in Web3 and in you're embarking on your creative path, I'm curious to know, when was the last time you felt alive?
Wow. You know, that's a good question. I think the okay, so this is going to sound silly, but well, maybe not. Whatever. I'll just say what's on my mind. So I think that when you're, I think this is common. This is like the human condition, but especially when you're older and you've got responsibilities and stuff, and kids, people are looking up to you to provide for them. You do forget about yourself, and if I'm being honest, like maybe you don't feel so alive most of the time, and maybe you probably I didn't even notice that, and that's kind of where when I was going to therapy and trying to get my head right. Um, I think that's something that I realized, and so I think that now I feel alive all the time, not every moment of every day, because when you've got your head down and you've got responsibilities and I know this now more than ever, trying to be the founder of a project and get the wheels turning. You're the one that's really responsible for that. Maybe there's people on your team, but helping you, of course, and they're invaluable. But really, at the end of the day, there's no one that's more responsible for it than you, right? So I now, through the tools that I have, take the time to, um, little moments throughout the day to center myself, to breathe, go outside. I live in Arizona, and I get to go outside, more months of the year than a lot of people, and just go outside. And I do that all the time throughout the day. Um, I think though that I had this really weird experience, and the more I talk, I think people are going to think I'm, you know, really out there. But I'll still answer the question honestly, because I don't think I am. I think I'm uh, pretty normal. But anyway, the last time I felt really, really alive was recently. I drove up to Sedona, and I don't know if everybody's familiar, but Sedona, Arizona, is said to be a very spiritual place. It was very sacred to the native peoples that lived here, um, and there are like these things called vortexes, and they're supposed to be like these centers of energy. I don't really believe in all of that too much, but nonetheless, I found myself there. I don't believe in, and I know a lot of people do, so no disrespect, but I don't believe in like crystals and that kind of thing. But as I said, nonetheless, I was up there in Sedona, Arizona, and I climbed this little mountain. It's hardly a mountain, but it's one of the vortexes, and you climb up this big ass rock, which it's not. I'm sure there are hikers that would just like laugh at it, but it's not it wasn't the easiest thing for me to do. So anyway, I get to the top of the thing, and I'm sitting on this rock, and what's really cool about it is, you've got this like almost 360 view of some of the most incredible mountains you could ever see. The Red Rocks, like the are just outstanding. You can see Bell Rock and uh, a bunch of others. And really, I think that it made me understand kind of like my place in the world, and like there are other examples too. But when you realize just how like small you are, in compared to everything, and how this planet doesn't really care about you and your problems, like your problems become very insignificant at that time, I think. um, but if you can get up there and you can look around and just see like just how amazing this planet really is, and get absorbed in that and truly forget about what's going on in your life and what problems you might have, and understand how really in the grand scheme of things, you know, they're really nothing. You really steps outside of yourself and you become really centered. And I think that was the last time I really felt alive, was understanding how, um, just having that amazing moment of stillness and stepping outside of myself.
Yeah, and experiences like that are they don't make you weird. I don't think that's a weird story at all. I feel like that's kind of it's just one of those moments where you realize like your place in nature. Like I'm a human on a speck of dust in the universe. And it sounds kind of morbid sometimes, but it really does put your problems into perspective. I'm one person that's facing this out of the billions of people on this planet, and it's not as big as I make it out to be.
Right.
It really makes those moments, they really ground you, and they make you think, I am living in my head. you know, it,
Absolutely.
it's one of those things. So, and I think it's interesting that, right, like you mentioned, you're not a very spiritual person, or at least in the sense of Sedona, but you had a spiritual moment. It
Absolutely.
makes it's very introspective and insightful, and it kind of sheds a new light on yourself. And moments like that are really critical for self development. I had a moment like that pretty recently, but it was a lot more mundane. I was walking around my neighborhood, and I just noticed there's like 20 cats, stray cats in my neighborhood for like no reason, dude. And I started counting them, and I don't know why or what happened or how, but I was just like, wow, this is real life. I'm living in the real world right now. There's all these cats on the street vibing, enjoying themselves, and I'm just a normal dude walking around. So mine's not standing on top of a mountain, but I've had similar experiences myself, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate. So I think this kind of leads me into my next question for you, which is, as you've been kind of doing your work and finding your own yourself along this creative journey around your professional journey, and kind of as you've been going through life with your family, I'm curious to know, how do you often get in your own way?
Huh. Okay. I think that I get in my own way, probably in a lot of ways, right? I think that I grew up in a time where therapy wasn't really readily available, and so I think um, we're working through this, but I think that I have a lot of like executive function issues, so like attention areas. I don't want to diagnose myself, but I'm open to whatever a professional says. So I think there are a lot of things like that. But I think that a lot of people navigate that, and so that. But I would say so that's there. That's kind of like the baseline, and maybe that contributes to this. But the real answer is I get in my own way a lot by um, I don't go with my instincts. A lot of times in business, I'm a lot more disciplined with trading now, but when I was, a big part of my quote unquote trading career, I don't follow my instincts because I'll have the instinct and then I'll just kind of make an impulsive decision and then I'll regret it later. Like, for example, there was an individual that, because as a founder of a project, however small it is, like mine, it's still growing. Inevitably, literally hundreds of people will reach out. Hey, can I work for you? I can do this. I can do that. I can do this job. I can do that job. And there was someone who was just kind of just really hounding me, to hire them to do a specific job. And my instinct immediately was like, no, this is just, uh, what they're offering isn't right for you or your program, my project, excuse me. Um, what they're offering isn't right. But a lot of folks have become really good at sort of just enticing you. Really, is what it comes down to. Oh well, I worked for this project and it worked wonders for them. Blah blah blah. So this whole time I'm resisting and resisting, um, and I don't know. He just got me on a weak moment, I suppose, because he was like, "Hey, let's hop on a Discord call." And anyway, long story really short, I ended up regretting letting him in, and then further by finally giving in and paying and buying for his service. Luckily, it was a very negligible amount of money. Wouldn't have gone all in. I think I'm in control of my impulses. That to that degree, to not really go all in on something like that. But I was like, okay, low risk, fine, whatever. But it ended up becoming more of a headache than I really cared to admit. And yeah, it was just really illustrates the point that like I'll have fairly good business instincts most of the time, I think, but nonetheless, I'll often just ignore them in moments of weakness and just kind of, I think I kind of get bored or just I think maybe my good nature, just kind of gets the better of me, and I'm like, oh gosh, all right, fine, let me help this guy out or this girl out, and you know, and I'll cave. so to speak. It doesn't always work, but every now and again, I'll have that moment, and I think that's how I get my weight more than anything.
Yeah. And dude, I can relate to that, dude. Especially from the perspective of a project owner. Sometimes you kind of believe people have best interests in mind. You know, you think they're good people, and then lo and behold, you're thousands of dollars down the drain, and you didn't get anything out of it. So I had that happen to me. So
I think every
um,
founder has a story like that, you know. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, and I mean, I can rant about that, dude. There's not a lot of education for new project founders. There's so many scams. There's not a lot of like options. You don't really know where to start. Like,
yeah.
dude,
There's no playbook, you know,
yeah,
or
exactly.
anything that was successful isn't anymore, you know, because things have changed. People, you know, the market has changed. People have changed, you know. So yeah, it's funny, and I could talk for a really long time, so I won't bore everybody with it, but yeah, I mean, and I would say that was just one example, though. Just, you know, to be honest with you, like there are a lot of other things where I'm just like, gosh, you know, just to go back to like something as simple as trading, you know, I'd be like, gosh, you know, I should just cut my losses now, or take my profits now, or whatever, you know, up or down, shorting or longing, and you know, I know better, but yet for some reason there's just a part of my brain that just says, fuck it, you know, and I go against my better instincts. So
Yeah, and I get that, dude. I've gotten liquidated my fair share of times. Yeah, I'm not a fantastic trader, so I definitely get the instincts part of it. So we are coming pretty close to time. We're actually running a little bit over time, but I do want to ask you one more question. But before I go ahead and do that, this is a daily space hosted by me, HV Socrates, on the Syndicate Network. Um, this is a daily show, so I've been interviewing Sal of the Chronicles of Cthulhu today. But tomorrow I will be interviewing Lonely Matt of the Lonely Listeners Collection. So if you're interested in learning about the story of another project owner, I will be talking about with him tomorrow at the same time, 1:30 p.m. CST or 2:30 p.m. EST, whatever time zone you might be. And we'll have another discussion with him. So if you are interested in that discussion, please go up to the top. I have pinned it. Drop a quick reminder instead of comment, like, and retweet on there. And then I hope to see you guys tomorrow. But today's show is about Sal. But in Sal, I'm going to ask you one last question about what we've been discussing here. And I'm curious to know, if you had to start over in Web3, would you do anything differently?
hmm. Well, besides, I guess everyone would say start earlier. Um, I think outside of that, honestly, no. I mean, sure, I might have made some smaller, different decisions, but I've operated fairly conservatively. And I think that given that there is no like real playbook, there's no silver bullet, there's no right answer to every decision. Ultimately, I think that just kind of broad strokes, I would do everything exactly the same. You know, start earlier and maybe not hire that one guy. You know, but those are besides those two things. No, I feel really good about the way that we've gone about things, and of course, we're still looking for answers, still trying to carve our path, you know, so to speak. But I think also overall, I feel very good about the direction I started in.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Are you? Did you rug? Hello.
I'm here.
Okay,
I know
yeah.
I ended that sentence kind of on a weird
Yeah, you're good. I was making
uptone,
sure.
like I was going to say more, but no, I feel confident overall, or in broad strokes, the way that I've approached it. So I'm sure that anyone could raise their hand and say, "Hey, you probably should have done this or that," and maybe I just don't see it. But no, I feel really good about the direction that I started in.
Yeah, for sure, right? And I've been a project owner myself, and that's exactly what it was for me. You know, I could have done without paying one or two of these scammers and losing a ton of money, but um, you know, it's a learning experience. You know, there is no playbook now, and there's not always a right answer. And when things move so fast and evolve so quickly, it's hard to know what to do right or what is right, even for that matter. So it's kind of a learning experience, and a lot of people say it's trial by fire. Do I always wish the space will be that way? No, but it is. That's kind of what it is right now. So it is what it is, and the mistakes you make and the problems you face culminate to lead you where you are today. So it's something to be grateful for sure. But this has been a fantastic show, Sal. I enjoyed talking to you, learning more about
Same
your
here.
inner workings and kind of your journey through Web3 and what it means to be a project owner and so on and so forth. So before I go ahead and rug the space, do you have any closing thoughts?
I would just say, for everyone, anyone out there listening now or the replay, like just be kind. Always try to choose kindness, and also, I think that what has helped me be successful in previous experiences and what will help me be successful moving forward is, stay curious. Genuinely care and be curious about what other people are going through. It's not. I think that a big sentiment in the industry right now is gimme, gimme, gimme. It's all about my exit liquidity and all of that. But you know what? Just understand that we're all real people. We're all trying to do. Uh, we're all trying to be successful, find the Quan or whatever. So just be kind, be curious, and I think we'll all be all right. We're all gonna make it.
Absolutely right, and always remember there is always someone behind that PFP. There's humans behind those. So be kind to people, right, and be curious. Because you never know what new information or new experiences will open doors for you. It might lead you down a path that you never ever would have expected, and that might be where you're happiest. So take that risk, take that bet, and see what happens. As always. But once again, Sal, thank you so much for coming on today's Making Time. This is a show hosted by me, H.C. Socrates, on the Syndicate Network, and we are for creators by creators. Today, we learned more about Sal's journey and the Chronicles of Cthulhu and kind of how he came upon that and how he discovered Web3 and a little bit more about him as a project owner. So, if you are interested in this show and you enjoyed this interview, I will be having another interview tomorrow, same time, 2:30 p.m. EST with Lonely Mats of the Lonely Listeners Club. And I hope to see you guys there. But without further ado, this has been a fantastic show. But I will be going ahead and rugging the space. But thank you guys for showing up today. I really enjoyed what we had here, and I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye bye.